Jaya Sachidananda Jaya Gaura Hari Sachidananda Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Gaura He Gaura He Gaura He Gaura He Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Radhe Jaya Radha Gopinath Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Oh Jaya Vrindavan Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrindavan Nandini Radhe Radhe Jaya Vrindavan Nandini Radhe Radhe Vrindavan Nandini Radhe Radhe Oh Radhe 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 Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Radha Gopinath Ju Ki Jai, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai, Gaur Prema. The translation of this bhajan. If Sriman Gauranga Mahaprabhu had not appeared, then what would have become of us? Now we really know what that means. Chalking through the history as we've done, there would have been no Bhakti Ras. Bhakti would have been there. Bhakti is always present, but no Bhakti Ras. Only Mahaprabhu, by his personal presence, could manifest this Bhakti Ras through the mercy of Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, through his Anga. What's that verse? Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sangopangasta Parsadam Yagya Sankirtanam Priya Yajanti Hi Sumesha. These Angas, these parsas of Mahaprabhu. What? Oh, what a nice question. She's saying, what is the difference between Bhakti and Bhakti Ras? Bhakti is service directly, principally to Krishna. It is mostly in Aishwarya, this mood of awe and reverence that we've discussed. And we discussed very closely what is the difference between Aishwarya and, it has to go on the end then, and Madhurya. And I gave the example, why is not the lifting of Govardhan Hill Aishwarya? It would seem that that's great opulence, that's breaking the boundaries of Naralila. It's going across that conception of what the human being can do. And then I explained that because Krishna himself, because Krishna himself is not thinking that he's the supreme personality of Godhead in Braj. Krishna is Sarvagya and Mugdata. He's all-knowing and he doesn't know his own Godhead. So therefore in Braj, the residents of Braj, they don't think that Krishna is the supreme. Therefore it is not Aishwarya. It is not Aishwarya when Mother Yashoda grabs Krishna's ear, when she chases Krishna with a stick. This is not Aishwarya. This is what Mahaprabhu, Krishna, wanted to give the jiva in this very exceptional period of time. This once in the day of Lord Brahma. In the 28th Dwarpa Yuga, the 7th Manvantara. This is the time when this spontaneous attraction to Krishna. We discussed this morning how Mahaprabhu took two teachings from each of the Sampradayas. And I was explaining how from the Rudra Sampradaya, Vishnu Swami, Balavaracharya, how he took this rag mag from that sampradaya, spontaneous attraction. But who was the spontaneous attraction to? It was to Krishna. It was not to Radha. This was the difference. This is what Mahaprabhu brought. So Mahaprabhu is bringing this understanding of intimacy with Krishna. We have an opportunity to develop an intimate relationship. This is called Bhakti Ras. And the Rasa Shastras are describing in such intimate detail the nature of those emotional exchanges. What is Sanchari Bhav? What are these 33 emotions that are experienced at the stage of Prema? What is Vaibhav, Anubhav, Sattvika Bhav? What is the Samagri? What is the Sthai Bhav? All of these terms have been given by Srila Rupa Goswami. Prior to Mahaprabhu, these terminologies were not there. Gurudev often used to say, if you don't want to hear about Braja Prema and the gopis, then quickly go to the Ramanuja sect. No problem. The Ramanuja sect are very paka, but they don't discuss Bhakti Ras. They don't discuss the emotional relationship amongst the Brijvasis, that intimate, spontaneous attraction. They just see the glories of the Lord, and the glories of the Lord are extensive. How can we not acknowledge the height of Aishwarya Bhav? So through the ages, throughout all of the different Chatuyugas, the principle of Aishwarya Bhav has been there. Even in Puridam we described in relationship to Mahaprabhu. The residents there are four-armed form. And they're all seeing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the Supreme Lord. That's why that dharma is Aishwarya principally. When Mahaprabhu is shooting those like fountains of tears out of his eyes, when with his head he pushes the huge chariot of Lord Jagannath, this is Aishwarya, exhibitions of Aishwarya. Even when Mahaprabhu is displaying those Ashtasattvika bhavs in the Singadwaha Goshala there, where the cows are licking his body, Mahaprabhu has broken out of the Gambhira and he's exhibiting the highest moods of separation from Sri Radha. He's tasting these three desires. He's tasting this final desire, this happiness that Radha feels by receiving the sweetness of his love. Krishna directly is tasting that, and his bodily transformations are shocking to the devotees. Saliva is coming out of his mouth, his eyes have rolled back in his head, he's looking like a pumpkin practically, or a tortoise, all his limbs have drawn in. The devotees begin to weep and cry. What is this manifestation? What is this lump of flesh that's become so distorted? This is an Aishwarya exhibition. It's not Madhurya. In Krishna Lila, this rasa was there. Of course, that's where he displayed it. The Rasa Lila is the crest jewel of all pastimes. That's why we must always discuss it in the light of Tattva and Siddhanta. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati said, you must never leave the Rasa Lila in the hands of the Sahajiyas. It is the Gaudiya's property. So it was there, but who was explaining that? Who even knew what Krishna was doing at night time? Did Mother Yashoda, Nanda Baba, anybody in Braj? Who understood what Krishna's pastimes were in the evening? No one understood that. So this Bhakti Ras was not manifest, even though it was happening, so to speak. Krishna was experiencing all of these very intimate relationships with the gopis, but it wasn't the meditation that any devotee was practicing. So it wasn't Bhakti Ras, which is practiced during Dwarpa Yuga. It was only when Krishna could come himself and explain what is Parakiya Bhav. I've explained this a couple of times already. The Paka Brahmins of South India, how could they appreciate that Krishna, God, the Supreme Lord, was dancing with other men's wives? This was abhorrent to think about. They couldn't imagine that. So their mood of Aishwarya was very much intact. So Aishwarya will take us to a Vaikuntha realm. This mood of, if you read in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopkumar, he goes to that realm. He has his flute tucked in his belt. He has his cowherd dress. And he wants to go and run to embrace Krishna. And those residents say, no, no, you must be very polite here. Just wait until Lord Narayan invites you into his palace, and wait until he wants to have some more intimate relationship with you. But don't you suddenly run forward and express your joy at seeing. No, no, we don't behave like that here. No, we should sing beautiful prayers and glorification. This is a very wonderful mood. This is in the heart of the jiva. He enjoys and appreciates that mood. Krishna himself appreciates that mood. He wouldn't manifest himself as Lord Narayan if he didn't appreciate it. But beyond that, Krishna has 4 qualities that Lord Narayan doesn't have. Prema Madhuri, Lila Madhuri, Rup Madhuri, Venu Madhuri. These 4 qualities that are beyond what Lord Narayan has. So sweet qualities. And this sweetness can only be experienced through intimacy, through spontaneous attraction and affection. So this rasa is manifested from this intimacy. You understand? You understood before, I'm sure. Such a difference, Shuddha Bhakti and Bhakti Ras. Bhakti Ras is when it's called samagri, when all these ingredients are churned together to sit on the intrinsic identity of the swarup, or the sthai bhav. The sthai means fixed. Your fixed emotional relationship with the Lord. Srila Gurudev has told us, and other acharyas also, that if you come in this age in the line of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, it is practically assured that you are in Madhurya Ras. If you are attracted to anything to do with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's practically assured that your sthai bhav is in Madhurya. This is almost assured. You can have Madhurya within Sakya Ras. You can be a Saka in Gokul, just like Brajanath in Jaivadharma. This is still Madhurya. The Sringara Ras, that very sweet Ras between Krishna and the gopis, that is more esoteric. That was like Vijay Kumar. His rasa was Sringara Ras. So understand that the word Madhurya can mean that collective sweetness in the realm of Gokul, Goloka. This realm of Gokul, Goloka. Remember we spoke the other day. I described the differences essentially between Gokul, you can see, here, and Vaikuntha. Who remembers how many rasas are manifested in Gokul? How many rasas? 12, thank you. 12 rasas are in Gokul. 12 rasas, the 5 principal rasas, Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya, and the 7 Gona rasas, Hasya, Rodra, Vibhats, Vayam, Karuna, Vira, one more. Hasya I said first. Anyway, look, I have them written down. I have my crib book here. I think I have Viras I said also. Karuna, Bhayanka, Vibhats discussed. Fear, Hasya. Anyway, there are 7. We probably said, Karuna I said also. So this makes 12 altogether. Now, how many rasas are in Vaikuntha? Her question is very pertinent to our discussion on Siksastakam, because we've been going progressively through all these different stages. And when we came to this stage of Vidya Vadu Jivanam, it's talking about knowledge. This knowledge will dissipate the darkness of the jiva so that he can experience bhav. And then from bhav, vipralamba, and then to prema. So this is important to know. So how many rasas in Vaikuntha? 2.5, thank you. Yes. 12 in Gokul. Fully 2.5 only in Vaikuntha. This is the essential difference between Shuddha Bhakti and Bhakti Ras, is understanding this point. What are the 2.5? Sit closer, Gopi. I can hardly see you there. So far away. Now I want to hear you though. Shamala. Shantaras, Dasyaras, and a little bit of Sakyaras. Who is Lord Narayan's mother and father? Doesn't have one. There's no Vatsalya. He just has Lakshmi, the goddess Lakshmi Devi, massaging his chest or his feet. So there are these 2.5 rasas in Vaikuntha, but nevertheless, rasa is Vaikuntha is such an exalted destination that most of humanity for billions of years are focusing on Vaikuntha Prema. This is what was available. We discussed, actually, she's not here. What's the name of that Pujari? What's the name? Janava. Yeah, she was asking the question, why does this Raganuga or Rupanuga manifest in the darkness of this Kali Yuga? It's such a high jewel, why is it manifested here? I think I've already described, but I'll say it again just so you can become familiar with it, that when we look at and examine the different ages, there are 4 principal qualities in Satya Yuga. Somaha means that all the residents were beyond the material modes of nature. The whole atmosphere was higher than this mode of rajas and tamas. And they were surit, they were completely friendly to all living entities. And they were shantaha, completely peaceful. And niravaha, no envy. These 4 qualities were fully imbibing the atmosphere of Satya Yuga. And of course the lifespan was 100,000 years. So we can imagine the sweetness of Mother Earth at that time. But what could the sadhaks attain? Who were the avatars that manifested in Satya Yuga? It was Parameshwaraha, Vaikuntanath, Yogeshwar, Ishwaraha. These are all very Aishwarya. There are 11 avatars, and they're all of a mood of Aishwarya. So this is all the residents of Satya Yuga could attain. They would meditate on Paramatma for thousands of years, like the Prachetas under the water, meditating for 60,000 years, this pastime in the Bhagavatam. So, but they didn't have that sweetness, that intimacy. And then as the ages come down in Treta Yuga, there are 2 qualities, Brahmavadinaha and Dharmashtataha. Everyone was very knowledgeable on how to worship the Lord, Brahmavadinaha, and they were all extremely dharmic, Dharmashtataha. This means that these qualities are all pervading. Just like in present time, Kali Yuga, the qualities of quarrel and hypocrisy are pervading everywhere. There's not a household on the planet that is not harassed by these negative influences. So similarly, in these previous ages, these exalted qualities were all pervasive in the atmosphere. This was the nature of those ages. But what was the destination of the sadhak? What could he achieve in Treta Yuga? It was still Aishwarya. The avatar was Vamanadev. He came and showed how to do the sacrifice and so on. It was so much Aishwarya. And then in Dwarpa Yuga, there is only one good quality. That quality is called Jignasavaha, Everybody was inquiring, where is the absolute truth? Where is the absolute truth? This was the mood. Everyone was praying. Everyone was inquiring towards the absolute truth. So in these 3 ages, even though they have so sweet and exalted qualities, still that spontaneous attraction to Krishna didn't manifest in those ages. In this age, Kali Yuga, we don't have any plus qualities. They're all minus. Manda sumanda matayo mandubhaga uparudita. They're all minus. Men are lazy, unintelligent, short-lived, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. Do you agree? How can we not agree with this? I mean, look at the way these Brijbasis deal with their roads. I can't believe it. They seem to smash everything all out the front here. You walk up the gully, that's all smashed. You walk into Sevakund Road, that's all smashed. They seem to have no sense of like creating order. It's almost like they want to make a great big disturbance everywhere. Last year it was that pipe in that main road going all the way up to ISKCON. You couldn't even get a rickshaw up there. I mean, you know, if we're not disturbed internally, we'll be disturbed externally. So it's all pervasive. So imagine this all pervasiveness in these other ages, but still this spontaneous attraction, this raganuga, couldn't manifest within those other ages. And I gave the reason that this desperation, this greed, is the principal quality of raganuga. Krishna bhakti rasa bhavitamati kriyatam yati telabhyate tatra loliam apimulyam ekalam janma koti sukritya nalabhyate. This loliam, this greed, unless this greed, this intense greed to develop this intimate relationship with the Lord is inspired in the heart, then it cannot manifest. This is the nature of raganuga. It's depending on greed, intense greed. Not just, oh, maybe, but no, intense. So that intensity can be increased by the intensity of the disturbance around us. We can, in what you call, looking for relief, seek shelter in this spontaneous. Actually, it's described that this particular Kali Yuga that we are in is actually more intense and more horrific than any other Kali Yuga. Any of the other 999 Kali Yugas in the day of Lord Brahma, this is the worst. And within that worst is the most highest jewel. How remarkable, how amazing is Krishna. Almost like in this bhajan that we began to read. At the last verse, it's talking about the author of the bhajan, Narahari. And he's saying, how do I continue to he says, somehow my heart has not melted. How do I continue to maintain the burden of this body? He's saying that Lord Brahma has created the body of Narahari, giving a stone in place of a heart. This intense humility is what is necessary to manifest the intensity of this prema. We've discussed a number of times how humility and prema are synonymous. Or you can say humility is the cause and prema is the effect. And you can say prema is the cause and humility is the effect. The more prema, the more humble. The more humility, the more prema. This is a fact. This is a fact. And this humility is easier to access in this horrific age. You can't even live like a human being practically. You can't even live with any sort of it's very difficult. Even if you're feeling peaceful, you can walk in the marketplace and get yelled at for nothing. Suddenly some, fight will begin over nothing. This is the nature of the age. So we're practically impelled. It's almost like an udipan, to take shelter. in a sense, of this highest. Why else? Can you give me a better explanation of why is this spontaneous attraction, this raganuga, manifested in the darkest age of all? There are 1,000 Kali Yugas in a day of Lord Brahma. This is described in Shastra as being one of them, of the most fallen. So why is it that Krishna has chosen, and we are the most fallen? We are coming from the western shores, we're coming from the land of the barbarian. We're not even taking birth in this land of Bharatvash. And yet often I think that amongst the Westerners they have more greed to attain this jewel. I sometimes see if you're born in an Indian body, you're very peaceful. You're perhaps more peaceful than the Indian, than the Western. This is no criticism or anything like that. But there can be complacency. If you're actually in the mode of goodness, it can create complacency to some degree. That this desperation to achieve the goal, you're very happy ringing the bells all day, waving some incense, taking some Mahaprasad, following a nice simple temple program, but there's no intensity has come in the heart to achieve this. This intensity must be there. And this is why the power of the holy name is there. Because this holy name, it creates this intensity. It fuels the greed. So these are some of the reasons why this, or the differences between this bhakti ras and bhakti. Bhakti is in principle more Aishwarya. But don't forget, as I'm saying things, I'm repeating what I've said in previous classes, because it seems that if I ask you the question about it, no one answers me, so perhaps you've forgotten it. So I have to repeat it again. So I was describing, I think perhaps in the first class, the difference between the Aishwarya in Goloka Vrindavan and the Aishwarya in Vaikuntha. It's described in the Raghvatman Chandrika, how if you take a spoonful of salt and you put it in a glass of water, it's very salty. This is like the Aishwarya in Vaikuntha Dham. It's very much obviously present there, this worship. Whereas if you take a sack of salt and you throw it in the Ganga, you don't even know it's there. So in fact, there's so much more Aishwarya within Gokul, yet it's covered by such a huge, greater amount of Madhurya. And I've often understood this by, sometimes when we used to come in front of Gurudev, we would be sort of going from one leg to the other, kind of shy, wouldn't quite know how to have a comfortable conversation with him. We'd be sort of, I saw so many times when the Western devotees came in front of Gurudev, often they wouldn't really know how to, but then I saw many of the Indian devotees would come in, and very easily they could just chatter away with Srila Gurudev. And I was often understanding that their sense of Aishwarya was very much deeper. They understood the height of Gurudev's personality. It never slipped away. I can remember once sitting with Gurudev in Mathura. Late at night, we were discussing with a couple of devotees, and it was very intimate. Gurudev was sitting on the bed, we were all sitting very close to him, talking about parts in Jaivadhamma. And I just said, I've forgotten what it was, but something, it felt like Gurudev was just, he makes himself look like a little old man. He can do that. He can make himself look huge and powerful in front of you, or he can make himself look just like a little, anyway, he was making himself in such a friendly mood. I just felt like putting my arm around him. And I said something very familiar. I've forgotten what it was. And Gurudev immediately looked away. It's like I had broken that etiquette of Aishwarya. So that Aishwarya has to be there to have real relationship. We have to understand the nature of Krishna. I can remember one time in Puri, I told Ramchandra Prabhu, this was in maybe 94 or something, I said, you know what, Srila Gurudev really frightens me sometimes. And he went straight and told Gurudev that. And then we came out onto the beach and we were going for a swim, and Gurudev came up in a little gamsha, and he came up looking just like a little old man, and he said, why are you afraid of me? Like this, you know? I mean, he can make himself look so attractive and like vulnerable. How can you think you can be afraid of this little old man, you know? But in the next second, he can just boom, you know, what? Like this, and just terrify you, you know, make you quiver inside, you know? So he can turn it on or off, but this Aishwarya, we should try and understand it in our relationship with Gurudev. Was it strong enough to develop an intimate relationship with him? If it was always very honorable, deep inside, perhaps externally it could be somewhat, you know, frivolous, etc. But if inside the mood was always never forgetting who is this personality, I think what would happen with us sometimes, we forget actually how great was Srila Gurudev. Because Gurudev would never put on his aura, in a sense. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada had to use that Aishwarya differently. You sometimes hear of Prabhupada's disciples, they see Prabhupada like a million suns coming off the plane. Often I've heard Prabhupada disciples describe Srila Prabhupada like that. He's done that too. But that's a certain sort of a mood. But most of the time, I found that Srila Gurudev was not exhibiting that Aishwarya. He would actually just exhibit what he wanted to teach us, which is this sweetness of Raganuga. This was his message. All these truths we're talking about Mahaprabhu were the very heart life of Srila Gurudev. He wanted to give us this understanding of what is Raganuga Bhakti, what is Bhakti Ras. Again and again and again he gave us all these teachings in this vein. But we have to appreciate what is that Aishwarya. That Aishwarya itself is beautiful. It's like a swiftly flowing mountain current stream. It bathes the whole consciousness in purity and goodness. But then we have to go beyond that and see the intimate relationship that is possible for us. And only this can be given by Mahaprabhu. Krishna never gave it himself. Krishna came as the Vishaya, the enjoyer of that rasa. He didn't come to distribute it. Mahaprabhu came to distribute it. He came as the Ashraya. He came to taste it and distribute it. He's dancing with one hand, tasting, and the other hand he's giving. So Bhakti Ras and Bhakti are a profound topic. So in our discussion this morning, we completed finally the first verse of Siksastakam, which contains all these 7 jewels. And tomorrow we'll begin the first jewel again, which is described in the 2nd verse. And this jewel is the stage of Anartha Nivritti, and it's described as the rising of the sun, and it parallels with the pastime of Nishanta Lila. So today we talked about Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam, the stage of Bhav, and I described the 9 symptoms of Bhav, and I described the necessity of focusing on Bhav if we want our sadhana to have any meaning at all. Unless we are focusing on giving my whole heart to Krishna in a service mood, how is my sadhana of any value? What sort of value is it? It's just wanting liberation or wanting peace, etc. We have to constantly examine what is my practice? How am I practicing? So therefore that has to be what is my goal? What is the sadhya? And the sadhya in our stage, unless you're already a Jataradi Sadhak, maybe some of you are, maybe Shamala I'm sure is on that platform. But if you're not, like me, in a sadhan bhakta, then we have to be clearly focusing on what is Bhav. And this Bhav parallels with the pastime of Apurvana Lila. We discussed a little bit yesterday of Madhyana Lila, the midday pastimes. I described it very, very briefly. I tried to get copies for you of the Astakaliya Lila printout from Jaivadharma. I'll do that. We did it yesterday, but the photocopy was so rough and bad. We almost lost 700 rupees because that's how much it cost to print up 20 sheets of all these different papers I wanted to give you. And they were all shocking. You couldn't even read the writing on them, so we had to take them back today and get most of our money back. But tomorrow we'll try and make printouts. But to know what is the nature of the different leelas at the time of the day. We've discussed Nishanta Leela, Prata Leela is when Krishna is just waking up, going to the Goshala, taking breakfast with the sakas, etc. Puvana Leela, he's going to the forest, he's performing pastimes with the sakas. Then he escapes from the sakas and goes to Radha Kund. He enjoys with the gopis for 5 hours in Madhyana Leela. And then he returns to the sakas. And then after some time, he plays his flute, he calls all the cows to him. And when all the cows gather, millions of cows, or hundreds of thousands of cows, millions of cows, all different sorts of cows, different groups of cows, it's described. And then he comes back, enters again in the festival of Goduli, when again he enters into the village of Braj at about this time, 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. Goduli means the dust of the cows is covering Krishna. The dust covers all of the cow, and they look so beautiful. Except there's one part of Krishna that doesn't have a particle of dust on it, and that's his garland. Sridham and Subal and the other sakas, Stoka Krishna, Arjun, they're standing around Krishna, and they won't let one speck of dust come on his garland. His garland is resplendent, so beautiful. They don't let any dust come on that. So it's shining very beautifully. But the rest of his body looks more beautiful with the bath of the hoofs from the cows bathing his body. So when he enters into the village of Braj, all the residents, they've lined the road. They know exactly. They've seen the dust in the distance of all the cows coming back. They rush. They have nothing else in their minds except to connect again with Krishna in some sort of service. And as soon as they see him, they run to either offer his respects or embrace him or hope that he will bless them, depending on their ages. But they all want to, all the mothers, they all run to Krishna first, and then they run to their own children, their own boys. And this is the difference that Baladev Prabhu perceives in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, that no longer are the mothers running straight to Krishna when he returns, but they're actually running straight to their own sons. So he's a bit bewildered by that. So this beautiful festival takes place at this Apurvarna Leela, like this afternoon Leela. Then after this Leela comes the Syam Leela. In the Syam Leela, this is the evening Leela. This is when Krishna again goes to the Goshala. He helps Nanda Baba milk the cows, etc. He comes back, he's bathed by his household servants, Praktak, his servant, they bathe him, oil him, etc. He takes some prasad in the Bhojanlaya, and he prepares for the next part of the day, which is called Pradosh Leela. In Pradosh Leela, this is when all of the residents of Braj, they meet in a communal hall, and they have beautiful displays of acting or singing or recitation like this. It's like their entertainment for the evening, and it's all centered on Krishna. They all gather together and they all sing together. They have dramas. They have so much festivity in the evening. This is their entertainment. And then finally Mother Yashoda, at about 9:30, 10, she takes Krishna home, puts him in his bed, and then the Ratri Leela begins, which is the nighttime pastime. The nighttime pastime, Ratri, it lasts the same length as the Madhyana pastime. And actually, I described before that the time that Krishna spends with Radha and the gopis during the day is exactly 12 hours. So 12 hours with Radha and Krishna and the gopis, and 12 hours with the sakas, etc. So we can see where Krishna's inclination is. So we can see where Krishna's heart is. Today one devotee asked me, why can't I just worship Krishna? Why is it better to worship Radha? But what pleases Krishna? What pleases Krishna, if our intention is to please Krishna, then if I am pleasing Sri Radha, then that is the most pleasing to Krishna. So these pastimes are going on simultaneously to these various rising stages of bhakti, or they've been paralleled to these stages of bhakti that we've been going through. So, and all of these jewels that we have discussed will be inspired and brought to our vision by Paramvijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. This holy name, even Krishna himself knows the power of his name. Raghunath Das describes in his bhajan, in his Vilap Kusumanjali, Srila Gurudev describes one pastime that when Raghunath Das is in Antyadash, in that spiritual reality, in that spiritual world, in his meditation, his identity is Tulsi Manjari. And as Tulsi Manjari, his service is to paint the lac on the bottom of Krishna's feet. So Tulsi Manjari, she's holding the tray and she's ready to paint the lac on Krishna's feet. But Krishna is there. And Krishna becomes very eager to do any service to please Sri Radha. Radha now, she's called Swadina Bhartika. This Swadina Bhartika is the heroine who controls her lover. And this is the place, this is the highest place that Radha wants to attain. She wants that place where she's controlling completely her lover. Then she's satisfied. Women like to control, right? So it starts with Radha. She's the biggest controller. She likes to control her lover. This means, yes, he loves me because he's allowing me to control me fully. But then Krishna's begging, oh, please, can I put the lac on your feet? And Radha, she looks, she thinks, oh, well, you're a new boy. Maybe you know how to do, maybe not. Anyway, you can try. So he takes the lac from Tulsi, she's holding the tray, and he begins to paint the lac on Sri Radha's feet. And then he's thinking, this lac is so blessed and fortunate that it's going to sit on Sri Radha's feet all day. I wish I was that lac. If I could be that lac, I could sit on Srimati's feet the whole day. So he's thinking like this. Then he suddenly thinks, Namna Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Punashuro Nitan Yuktam Vinatvam Nami Naminaha, that my name and me are the same. So then he begins to write his name on the sole of Sri Radha's feet with the lac. And he writes Shyam, he puts an S. And then his heart starts to beat very hard, and his hand is trembling, and he's starting to sweat because he's really connecting with Sri Radha's lotus feet. And then he writes the Y, but he can't write it properly. It's becoming like zigzag. And Radha, she's looking, what the heck is he doing? What's he fooling around? What's he doing like this? And then she becomes very irritated. And then she, with her lotus foot, she pushes him. And she pushes that stamp of lac onto his forehead. Krishna becomes so ecstatic. Now his dream is satisfied. His desire is fulfilled. He's got the lac on his forehead. He'll carry that for the rest of the day. But at that point, Sri Radha, she indicates to Raghunath Das, who's Tulsi Manjari, oh, now you come and do. So Tulsi Manjari, she's just about to go and take that pot of lac from Krishna, and then she wakes up and she's in Radha Kund. And then again she's come back into this Bahirdesh. This is the body of the sadhak, Raghunath Das. So this pastime, it shows that even Krishna himself knows the power of his name. Where does the name of Krishna come from? It comes from the sky of Krishna's heart. That's where it's coming from. The more we chant, the more we can realize the sweetness of the Lord's heart, which is where the name is actually coming from. So the devotee, he tries to understand, or at least hear about, all these very sweet truths. Even in the Bhagavatam, now I'm just discussing something of the glories of Nam, because at the end of this first chapter in Bhajan Rahasya, there's very, very beautiful glorifications of Nam, constant glory, one after the other. The Lord said, regularly chant japa of this Mahamantra. In this way you will attain all perfection. Chant at any time and in any circumstance. There are no other rules for chanting. And Bhaktivedanta Thakur, he just gives a flood of beautiful verses glorifying the holy name. So this is the conclusion of the first verse, Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Now there's a page here which is very beautiful. This is on page 52 if you're interested to look at that. It's verse 33. I want to read from here because in the Bhajan Rahasya Vritti, this is the commentary of Srila Gurudev, he's describing how to perfect the chanting of our mantras. This is our Gayatri mantras and our Hare Krishna mantra. And he's describing this in different stages. He says, while chanting the holy name, one should fix the mind on the desired name of the Lord and remember pastimes connected with that nature, with that name. So we are thinking of Gopinath, we are thinking of Radha Raman, we are thinking of Radha Damodar, we are thinking of Radha Gokulananda, we are thinking of all these beautiful names of Sri Krishna in Vrindavan and connecting the names with the various pastimes that they represent. Like Gopinath, he is the Prayojan Ishtadev, the Ishtadev of Prayojan Tattva. This is the topmost. Raghunath Das is the Acharya representing Prayojan. And Gopinath is the highest conclusion of our sweet relationship with Radha and Krishna. We can either understand it as the Krishna that is controlled by the gopis or the gopis that are controlled by Krishna. Gopinath. This is so beautiful. So meditating on the name. The mind of the conditioned living entity wanders to different subject matters, and therefore one should stay in the association of sadhus and control the mind through renunciation and practice, through vairagya and abhyasena. Krishna is saying the same instruction in Bhagavad Gita when Arjuna said, my mind is like the restless wind, it just seems to go all over the place. How can I possibly control it? Krishna responds, he says, abhyasena ta vairagya, that by practice and by vairagya, by detachment, one can begin to control this restless mind. So this mind will be controlled by our deliberate focusing on the names, on the particular names of our Ishtadev, the names of where we want, what we want to meditate on. Gurudev is describing like that. Then he says, Socha, it is necessary for the sadhak to maintain a standard of external cleanliness. This is more or less what I'm describing now, is how Bhaktivedanta Thakur, after such glorification of the holy name, is now giving us some hints on how to access the holy name regularly. How can we incorporate this into our regular sadhan bhajan? So he's saying the necessity, or Gurudev is saying the necessity of external cleanliness through bathing and so forth, to keep his mind pure through internal cleanliness. He can do this by bringing the 6 enemies headed by lust under control. In this way, his mind will not be attracted to anything other than Krishna. So we're working on it. We're in progress. Never think, oh, I have no strength, I have no bhakti. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he said very encouragingly, you should all understand that you are already in the shower. You are in the bath. You are in the process of becoming clean. We are in the process of purifying our impurities. We're in this stage of this process. It's already happening. Sometimes we will experience bliss, some little ruchi. Even a hint of asakti may come through. Even a vague understanding, a little drop of what is bhav bhakti may come through, to give us inspiration to move towards the goal. We must be progressive with eagerness. We've discussed so many times this eagerness, this greed, is an absolute principal commodity in bhajan. And then it's saying mona, to speak only Bhagavat Katha and reject talk unrelated to Krishna is known as mona, silence. One should not talk about anything mundane while chanting. Very important. How to stay in that beautiful golden bubble of Nam. As soon as you break that atmosphere, see how the mind is. If I sit here and start talking about something really mundane, your whole consciousness and self will be just distracted totally. I've been in groups of people, and sometimes a little child just starts wandering around. Everyone immediately looks at the child. They're looking everywhere where it's going. Their distraction is completely gone to the child. They've lost focus. The mind is like that. It's sometimes like a little child. It just starts wandering. It's like a naughty child. We have to know how to lovingly bring it back to its focus. If you beat it too hard, you might make it cry too loudly, and then it might become depressed or lament. This is not helpful for bhajan. We have to, in Manashiksha it's described, Raghunath Das, he's saying, oh my dear mind, please, he's begging his mind, touching his feet, flattering his mind. Oh, come back, sit quietly. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's listed 3 qualities that are vital for bhajan. 3. The first is patience. Patience is what is to do with the mind, what we're talking about. Have patience with our wandering mind. Have patience with the external situation. Have patience with others. Don't become impatient. It's this impatience to have my material desires quickly fulfilled that leads to so much disturbance in the consciousness. Don't be impatient. I'm very impatient, but I'm trying not to be impatient. But at least I'm hearing it. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he's saying like this. So the first quality he's saying is patience. And then the second quality he's saying is forgiveness. Forgiveness of myself and all the unlimited millions of billions of sins I've performed in millions and billions of lifetimes. I was talking to one devotee the other day, and he was telling me how this wave of forgiveness came over him at one point, and he felt he was going to so many different people asking them to forgive him. He realized the nature of his enviousness, and he was begging forgiveness from the Dham, begging forgiveness from individuals, just begging forgiveness. This forgiveness is a wonderful quality, because if we're not begging for forgiveness, perhaps we'll think, in our arrogance, that actually, I can get away with so many prideful acts. So this mood of forgiveness is really a softening feature in the heart. To be begging forgiveness for how many times have I not respected you sufficiently? How many times have I neglected your best interest? How many times could I have assisted you in some way where I just thought about my own selfish ends instead? How many times did I do this? So many times. So this forgiveness is the second quality Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati talks about. And then finally, the third quality he talks about is humility. Humility comes in the third quality. So it's very beautiful to just contemplate these qualities of patience, forgiveness, and humility in the sense of this mona in our talking with each other. And then he says, Avyagrata, the restless nature of the unsteady mind is called Vyagrata. One should chant with Avagrata, a peaceful and undisturbed mind. This means I once asked Krishna Priya up here at Krishna Balaram with Madhusudan, Krishna Priya. Her name used to be Kavita, Krishna Priya. I asked her how to perform bhajan many years ago. And she said, every morning you should rise during Nishanta Lila, and you should sit in a quiet place. And you should sit with some books that you like to have. And you should have your mala. And you should regularly sit in the same place and take your mala. Day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Try and make a steady environment where you're taking that name. This is very helpful. And especially we can advise when we travel around householders that we stay in different places, because you all have to go and give this knowledge to other people in the Western world. This is why we're hearing this now, so we can give it and introduce Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement more vigorously in the Western world. If we just sit here and drink this beverage, how will the Western world survive? We have to, so when we're speaking sometimes to householders and families, we can advise them, find one place in your home. In that same place every day, become regulated in that place. This is where I keep my mala. This is where I keep some book like that. It's where I sit and chant. So she gave this advice. It was a good advice. It was created a steadiness. She said other things. But that was very good. And then Gurudev is saying, Anirveda, one should not become discouraged by moving slowly in his endeavor to attain the desired goal. Rather, one should chant with patience. So this is what I've already described. This mood of patience should be very much there. And then he's saying, Namarta Chintana. While chanting the holy name, the sadhak should remember Radha and Krishna's pastimes of meeting, Milan, and separation, Vipralamba. When he chants his mantras, he should practice in the following 5 ways. I don't know if you read this or not, but I'll read it again because it's very, very helpful. It's only brief. So he's saying, now this is applying to our mantras. The sadhak should know the meaning of the mantra. We should know the meaning of the mantra. We should know the meaning of each word of the mantra. Padabja Prabhu was telling me the other day, Savita had been saying in her class that there's certain emphasis on particular words in the mantra. How was that described again? Can you say?
She's saying that if you want to make very quick advancement in spiritual life, when you chant your mantras that Gurudev has given, that you can emphasize particular words. And if you don't know what those are, you can ask any of the...
Yes. So there are particular words within each mantra that, if emphasized, will increase our progress in understanding the Ishtadev of that mantra. When Srila Gurudev gives us those mantras, he installs the Ishtadev of each mantra in our hearts. And by that chanting repeatedly, that repeated chanting is glorifying that Ishtadev. That's why we chant 10 times. It's 10 times in glorification of that Ishtadev represented by that mantra. So this is explained here. So I'll just finish this. The sadhak should know the meaning of the mantra and remember the predominating deity of the mantra devata, and his own specific relationship with that deity. So we should be contemplating these things while chanting our mantras. Then the second is Nyas. The deity of the mantra is my protector. We can think of the example of Gopinath, how he took absolute shelter of his mantra. It took him through all the different worlds of consciousness. This conviction is called Nyas, to know that my mantra is my protector. It is true that success can be attained by uttering the mantra one time only. Nonetheless, the mantra is uttered 10 times or 108 times for the pleasure of the mantra devata. This is called Nyas. This is why we chant 10 times each mantra. The next stage is there's 5 levels here. So prapti, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the mantra devata. This is called prapti. I'm fully taking shelter. Taking shelter means I'm in a mood of submission. I'm in a mood of prepared to accept full guidance from the inspiration of this mantra. I've opened my heart to accept this mantra in a mood of Sharanagat. You understand? Then he's saying, Sharanagati itself, I am a jiva who is suffering extremely, and therefore I surrender to the deity. This resolve is called Sharanagati. In Sharanagati, there are 5 stages of Sharanagati. The first stage is called prapti. Prapti is when, say, just someone comes down from Delhi. They've never even been practically in very many temples, and they come into the temple and immediately they're inspired to pay obeisances. This paying of obeisances is considered the first stage of surrender, of Sharanagati. This prapti. Just off, like if we're in the West, for example, and someone comes in off the street and they see all the devotees, they see the deities, they see Tulsi Devi, they smell the incense, they hear the mantras, they're overwhelmed, and immediately they offer Dandavats. How pleased is everyone? Wow, look what he just did. You know, it's really wonderful to see. So that is the first stage of Sharanagati. The second stage of Sharanagati is described by Bhaktivedanta Thakur in the 6 stages. What's that? Anukul, Anukulyasya Sankalpa, Pratikulyasya Varjanam, Rakshisyasya Vishwasyo, Gopritva Varanam Tata, Atmanikshkepa Karpanya, Sadvidi Sharanagati. These 6 stages of Sharanagati. Accepting what is favorable, Anukul, and rejecting what is Pratikul. Accepting Krishna, Rakshisyasya, as my protector. And then Vishwasya Gopritva, accepting Krishna as my maintainer. And then Atmanikshkepa, fully with humility. And then Atmanivedanam, with full humility. I am embracing those 6 moods of Sharanagati. So this is the second stage that Bhaktivedanta Thakur describes this in Chaitanya Shikshamrita. These stages of Sharanagati. And then the third is called, just by itself, Atmanivedanam. This is like the second one, but it's fully surrendered to the will and desire of the Lord. In every aspect, I accept Krishna's guidance. Now, the next 2 are very transcendental. The next one is called Tadatma. This is when I am feeling, Krishna, I am yours completely. Krishna, whatever you do, whatever is your will, I am compliant. However you want to move me, whatever you want to do, I am yours entirely. This is called Tadatma. Tadatma means ultimately that I become like Krishna in a sense. It's like I become completely submissive to his desire. And the 5th stage is called Mamata. Krishna, you are mine. This is the highest stage of Sharanagati. This stage is like Sri Radha. The stage before that is like Chandravali. Chandravali is like that Tadatmika. She is fully submissive to Krishna. She's thinking, I am yours, Krishna. That mood is called Dakshin Bhav. But Radha's mood is called Bhaumya Bhav. This contrary mood. Krishna is very happy with that. But Radha is thinking that you're mine. So these are 5 stages of surrender. And then finally the 5th way to chant the mantras. Gurudev is described. Oh, didn't I say the 4th? Sharanagati. Yes, Sharanagati is the 4th. And then the 5th is Atmanivedanam. Whatever I have belongs to him, Krishna. It is not mine. I am not mine either. I am his for him to enjoy. This is Atmanivedanam. If one follows the process comprised of these 5 limbs, he will quickly attain perfection in chanting his mantras. So that's helpful to understand. I'll just read one more little bit from here. It's very beautiful. In Kali Yuga, Swayam Bhagavan Shri Krishna has appeared in the form of his name. Through Harinam, the whole world can be delivered. Do you believe that? It's hard to believe, isn't it? Our whole world personally can be delivered. The world that we personally live in can be. But the whole world, all those demons making so much problem, they're all going to be delivered. We have a lot of work to do if that's going to be true. We have to get out there. Are you ready for that? Next birth. No time. No time. This time around. The words Harinam in the mantra Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam are used 3 times to make people with mundane intelligence become fixed in chanting Harinam. The word Kevala, meaning only, is used to make it abundantly clear that Gyan, Yoga, Tapasya, and other activities are to be renounced. Salvation is never possible for one who disregards this instruction of the scriptures. To emphasize this, the words nashteva, meaning no other way, are repeated 3 times in this verse. So that more or less brings us up to the end of the first chapter in Bhajan Rahasya, and tomorrow we'll begin the second verse of Siksastakam. Do any of you have any questions at all about anything we've discussed?
Can we talk about the meanings of each of the pair of names when we do the verses tomorrow?
Okay. That's described by Jiva Goswami. There's a little book called Harinam that Gurudev published. And in there's commentaries by Bhaktivedanta Thakur, commentaries by Gopal Guru, commentaries by Jiva Goswami. All of these words although the names of Krishna are discussed there, the different meanings. So they have different meanings. They're not just one fixed meaning. The acharyas have given different meanings there. He's exhibiting Aishwarya Leela. Of course, he himself is in full Madhurya Leela, and his closest associates are also in Madhurya Leela. But how the residents of Puri are seeing Mahaprabhu, they're seeing him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And many of the devotees who are following him are also seeing him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How do they feel when they see those Astasattvika bhavs in his body being exhibited? They're not human. Like when he's in the ocean, caught by the fishermen, all his limbs are disjointed. He's like, 10 feet long practically. His arms have become really long because the joints have become, dislodged, yes. So he's all just like, he's actually gets all rolled up in the net. So it's so strange for the devotees to see that. You know, even when Swarup Damodar is seeing that, they're horrified. This is not sweetness or madhurya displays. It's a display of his internal sweetness. This is how, when he describes what he was actually seeing when he was floating in those waves of the Jamuna, is so beautiful. How the gopis were having a raging battle with the blue lotuses and the red lotuses in the Jamuna. So beautiful pastime that Mahaprabhu was witnessing. But in that ecstasy, how it affected his body was, for someone to see, quite horrific in a sense. Seeing these bhavs. So that exhibition is one of Aishwarya. It's not Madhurya. Madhurya Dham is Navadvip. Madhurya Dham is so much higher than Puri Dham. In Navadvip, there are the 9 islands. There are all the pastime places. There is Nandagaon, Godrum, etc. are all manifest. There is Ganga Devi. There is even Jamuna Devi. But in Puri Dham, where are any of these aspects of Braj? They're not present. Puri Dham is like Dwarka. In Dwarka is full of Aishwarya. Remember when Rukmini became disturbed when Krishna said, "Oh, you shouldn't have married me. Actually, I'm just a useless cowherd boy. You know, you don't know what is my family properly," etc., etc. And Rukmini became so overwhelmed, she fainted. Krishna was just joking. And then at that time, Krishna manifested 4 arms. With 2, he picked up Rukmini, and with another 2, he smoothed down her hair and rearranged her shringara, etc. So we see this, that regularly, this four-armed form is an Aishwarya, it's an opulence. It's not the sweetness of Madhurya. this topic of Aishwarya and Madhurya is very, very sweet to understand clearly. If someone is seeing and witnessing the Lord as if he's God, that creates a mood of Aishwarya. And I described lifting Govardhan Hill. You would think that they would think that that was God lifting Govardhan Hill. But they didn't even think that Krishna was lifting Govardhan Hill. They thought Nanda Baba had it on the end of his stick, and the other Gopas. And the Sakhas also were holding up. And Krishna was just there also with his little finger, but they weren't convinced that he was the only one holding it up. And Sri Radha had already told Giriraj Govardhan, if you drop 1 centimeter, I'll burn you to ashes. So the Sakhis, they were knowing that Sri Radha actually is lifting Govardhan. So this is, you would imagine, what higher form of Aishwarya could you conceive than a little boy picking up a mountain? But it wasn't Aishwarya because they weren't seeing him as God. Remember afterwards, all the Gopas, they came to Nanda Baba and they said, we think your son is perhaps, a ray of Lord Narayan, or maybe he's even Lord Narayan himself. And Nanda Baba laughed and laughed and laughed. This little boy steals, lies, cheats. Heaven knows what he gets up to in the forest when he goes. We hear all these rumors and so on. They think that he is God. No. Their love so much covers the Aishwarya. Gurudev described once that sometimes in Braj, this Aishwarya will bubble up to the surface. He described if you have 200 liters of milk boiling, and amongst that 200 liters you have a little piece of grass, and sometimes during the boiling that little piece of grass comes to the top, but then it gets submerged again. So every now and again a moment of Aishwarya comes when they might just think Krishna may be God, but quickly it gets submerged again. Sometimes the gopis think that Krishna's God just because Purnamasi told them so. And sometimes they think that, but only for a moment. And then their sweetness completely covers them. They just have so much attraction for this person himself. They can't even think of his Godhead. But in Puridam, that mood is different. Because Mahaprabhu is in the form of a devotee. And he's practicing his sadhan bhajan. And other personalities are in Puridam doing the same. They're devotees. He comes in the mood of a devotee, practicing devotion. So if you're practicing devotion, your mood is initially at least more Aishwarya, because you're becoming devoted to the Lord. So his associates there, living in Puri, they would feel they were seeking the path of devotion. Mahaprabhu was showing himself the path of devotion. But he was showing the intimate aspect, ultimately. And we can only understand this through the name. When we take them... When he was in... Yes, his sadhan would be that he'd go to the Tota Gopinath temple every day and he'd hear Srimad Bhagavatam from Gadadhar Pandit. This was his regular practice. He would go and take bath in the ocean, etc. He would come to the temple. He would see the beautiful arti and so on. He had his regular practice. He would take Nam himself. He would chant Nam to show us. He would show us his own mood of devotion. In Navadvip Dham, he didn't exhibit that mood of devotion. In Navadvip Dham, he was a restless scholar. He roamed about defeating all the Vaishnavas. When he was very young, he used to take all the young girls' offerings on the bank of the Ganga and spray water onto the Brahmins, saying they're anik. There was no mood of devotion like it was exhibited in Puri. It was quite different mood. So that devotional mood is somewhat Aishwarya. But the conclusion through his teachings, through principally these teachings of Siksastakam, and of course his empowering Sri Rupa Goswami to enunciate and analyze rasa, to give it a language. There was no language previously to Rupa Goswami creating that language of rasa. Those words were already there in Hindi, These words are already there, right? In Psychology of Hindi, you can read these same words. Anubhav is there in Hindi, words like that, and yeah. But Rupa Goswami, he created this.
He changed the meaning. He gave new meaning to those old words.
Yes. He created the language of rasa. Without the language, without the definitive path, how can we go in that direction? We have so much to be grateful for Rupa Goswami Pad. Jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Sachinandana Gaura Hari ki jai. Anant Gaura Vaishnava ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Radhe 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 Jai 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 Shri Radhe. Radhe Radhe O Radhe 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 Jai 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 Shri Radhe. Radhe 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 O Radhe 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe. O Radhe 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 Jai Jai Shri Radhe. O Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopala Jaya Jaya. O Radha Ramana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare.